This is your host, Steven Sargent. Welcome to another episode of Around the Coin. Today we have Ray Chan. He's a CEO and co-founder of 9gag. If you remember the meme culture, they pretty much invented it in Web2. And now he's bringing us Memeland, which is basically a Disneyland for Web3 projects. We get into everything. His early days in Y Combinator with groups like Instacart and Coinbase. We talk about building community in Web3. Also, how Web3 has this dichotomy of always being contradicting. We dive into how to bring back the creator economy and tokenization back to Web3, especially for creators. And we talk about why Asia is driving a lot of this growth. This is by far one of the funniest conversations. My cheeks are probably red by how much I laughed in this conversation. Ray's an amazing entrepreneur, but he's very practical and reasonable in his approach to Web3. And this is definitely a podcast you want to listen to. Let me know in the comments. Reach out to Ray on Twitter/X after this episode if you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon. This is your host, Steven Sargent, the Around the Coin podcast. We have Ray Chan here, CEO and co-founder of 9gag, which is a global cross-platform entertainment network. But you've also now created Memeland, which is one of the fastest and largest growing SocialFi, which we'll get into talking about exactly what that is, ecosystem for Web3 and Web3 Venture Studio. Ray, great to have you to the episode. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start jumping into some of these questions and what you were doing there at 9gag for the last decade and a half.
Yeah, last 15 years, yeah. I'm Ray, one of the co-founders of 9gag. 9gag is basically a platform to share memes, right? And our company mission is very straightforward, is to make people happier and make the world happier, right? So I think we've been doing a decent job, right? Because a lot of people actually laugh, right, when they see memes. I remember when we started 9gag, meme was like very niche, right? Right now, everyone talks about memes, right? I mean, it's almost like my mom can share memes with me. So I feel like we have achieved something. Yeah, we are part of the culture forces that push meme to the mainstream. Yeah.
I want to know, like, when we talk about memes, like, it seems like whether it's an award show, any kind of event, social gathering that's on social media, it almost feels like people are doing things to become meme famous. Have you noticed, like, the certain adjectives they use or the faces that they have kind of pushing the internet to put them in the meme to get that virality? Have you noticed that over the last 2 years since you started back in 9gag 15 years ago?
It's almost like people feel like they live in the Truman Show, right? Like the movie, right? They want to become like the focus. They want to become the star of the show. That's why they always try to say something, do something to get famous, right? You almost like think in soundbite, right? You almost think in like a dance move, right? It's kind of like that. Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting, right? To be part of the audience, right? But if you are the creator, right, it's actually quite hard to stay in the top, right? To stay getting attention. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Your concept was about making people happier. It was 2008. If everyone remembers the kind of global financial crisis that we went through then, we're seeing a little bit of remnants of it now, I think, going into 2024. Was that the concept, that the world was kind of in a down state and you felt there needs to be something to unite globally that can make people happier? Or what was the precipice about having a mission to make people happier?
Honestly, I didn't remember much, right? It's 15 years ago, right? It's almost like more than 1/3 of my life ago, right? But I studied law at college, right? I did all the things at college, right? Except studying, right? And that's why I didn't become a lawyer. I studied law at college, right? I didn't become a lawyer. I worked at a TV station for 3 months, and then I worked at a bank for a few months, and then I joined an internet company. At the time, I thought, hey, my boss was so young. If he could start a company, why couldn't I, right? I mean, he's smart, but I'm not that stupid, right? At least that's what I thought, right? And then during the leisure time, I found my younger brother and also some friends, and then we worked together, right, on some projects. We work on projects to sharing reviews for cosmetics, reviews for home appliances. And then we tried to build an online karaoke. All of these useful ideas didn't work, except a very stupid idea called 9gag to allow people sharing memes and sharing funny pictures on internet. I think that is the one that actually have users. Because I don't know whether you, Stephen, you remember that at the time when we want to share funny pictures, right? We were still using AOL Messenger, MSN Messenger. You have to wait for the image to upload. and then you send it, right? It's not very, very user-friendly. Yeah. So at the time before, oh, maybe we could create a website to get all these funny pictures, and then you can just send the link. That was the whole idea. Yeah, so we didn't really think too much about the global economy, right? I mean, when you were young, you don't talk about economies, right? You talk about your own pocket, right? So I think that was not the background idea before we start, right? But honestly, when we look back, maybe that's one of the reasons why it catches on, because I think people need a laugh, right? And a lot of the energy, right, was on the financial crisis and stuff like that. I mean,
Right.
around that time, Bitcoin was born, right? So it's like very, very, very interesting when we look back. Yeah.
Now, tell me about those first couple of years, because you say your boss started the business, you could start a business. I'm assuming maybe the ad revenue play doesn't happen for maybe a few years. When do you decide that, oh, we're going to keep on going on versus, oh, like we're going to go get real jobs and we might do this on the weekends? Walk me through, because I think a lot of listeners have these same type of things. They're doing something on the side, catches a little bit of fire, but then it's not paying their bills. They ended up going back to their full-time job and they never revisit it, where versus you've leveraged this to build a community of over 200 million people across multiple platforms. What was kind of that breaking point for you to say, yeah, I think we're going to go all in and continue this?
We actually didn't go all in when we first started. Yeah. For the first 3 years, right, we still keep our day job, right? I mean, we are very conservative, right? At the time, I worked at that startup, right? During the leisure time, I worked with my co-founders, right, to build something, right? Until we started to get some revenue, right? Then we went all in, right? So it's almost like very, I would say, it's not traditional, right? Compared to all these startup stories in the Silicon Valley, right? So for us, it's almost like, oh, we go in pretty safe, step by step, right? We launch a company, right? And then we started to get revenue. And then at the time we thought, hey, of course, you can browse internet anywhere, right? At the time, we thought, oh, maybe we should apply to the accelerators in the Silicon Valley, right? It's like playing basketball. I mean, you can play basketball anywhere, but it would be anyone's dream, right, to play at the NBA, right? And Silicon Valley was the NBA of tech companies. Yeah, that's why we applied to Y Combinator. That's why we applied to 500 startups, right? And then we got in 500 startups. And after that, we raised a small seed funding. And then after that, we joined Y Combinator, right? So the whole thing was kind of like a dream come true to us, right? And that's how we continue to build NiGet for 15 years.
I've heard you talk about the early days of grinding it out, working late nights. Tell me about the conversations you're having, because you're in Y Combinator. Everyone's building what might be the next Facebook, or they're launching these big VC-backed companies. And when they say, hey, Ray, what do you do? You're like, yeah, I have this meme site. Yeah, meme site. Did you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome? Or were you just having fun with the whole experience? And you're like, hey, I get to learn and pull from these people to invest in a business that maybe no one else has thought about?
It's actually not that bad, right? One of our batchmates at Y Combinator was Coinbase, right? So that was like summer 2012, right? Sharing funny picture is still more meaningful to sending digital money, right? At the time that no one really cared, right? So I remember Brian, right? Brian Armstrong, right? CEO of Coinbase, right? I mean, at that time, he was still the single founder, right? So he asked people to create account on Coinbase and then send people Bitcoin when they sign up, right? So, I mean, we were kind of popular, right? Comparing to Brian at the time, right? So we were crazy, but he's even crazier. Yeah, that's why I find it really funny, right? After all this year, and then we started to learn more about crypto. We started to launch our own Web3 project, and then Coinbase is like one of the key companies, right, in building Web3. So I feel like sometimes it doesn't really matter what others think about what you're doing, right? It matters what you think about what you're doing, right? So we believe that, okay, what we are doing, which is like sharing funny pictures, like sharing memes, is valuable to a lot of people, right? That's why we keep pushing it. And then for Coinbase, right, for other companies in our batch, they have their own mission, they have their own dream, and then they keep building it. Right? Another company that was in our batch is Instacart, right? The grocery shopping company, right? So we have a lot of like famous like alumni, right? To me, when I say it out loud, it's not about okay to say NiGet is cool, Memeland is cool, right? It's more about, hey, we just throw out some names so that you know that you can you may think that we are cool, right? But we actually, no one really care too much, yeah. But I mean, it is what it is, right? We still survive. I think that's the number one thing, yeah.
And what's funny is like Coinbase probably has a Slack channel dedicated directly to the 9gag so they can see all the funny memes. And people are just probably putting in their favorite funny memes. I'm sure everyone, you mentioned some huge companies. People probably wonder, do you still keep in touch with these people? Do you kind of like grow on once every 2 years? Do you all meet as a cohort? Does Brian maybe flip the bill for a nice dinner? How did those relationships work almost a decade past when people reach different levels of what we would consider success, especially from business points of view?
I mean, it's almost like you get into a good school, right?
Yeah.
And then the school has a very strong alumni network. It doesn't mean that all the alumni, right? It doesn't mean that you keep in touch with all your cool classmates, right? And to be honest, someone who were cool back then, right, may not be cool right now, so that they may not join the reunion and stuff like that, right? But one thing for YC is a tech accelerator, right? That's why it connects people using tech as well. We have an internal website where it lists out all the founders and all the companies within all the batches. Yeah, and then you can ask questions on it, and then you will get deals from it. You can book office hour. It's almost like mini Facebook in a way, right? So that's how we kind of like keep in touch. And as an alumni, you can join all the YC demo days. So somehow you have a first look at all the new companies, right? So this is how, at least how we get in touch. We keep in touch because after all, we are not based in the US. So somehow we are more detached, right, from the main group of people, right? But to be honest, right now, Web3 is global, right? Tech is global. So somehow we see our batchmate from time to time. We also see more companies, right, joining YC right now and also 500 Startups. At the time, we were the first Asian company that joined 500 Startups. We're the first Asian-based company that joined Y Combinator. So somehow when we look back, it's almost like it's such a long time ago. Things have changed so much, right? Right now, I still remember, right? Sam Altman, right, was the guy who emailed me, hey, Ray, we want to invite you to join YC. And then right now, Sam is not even at YC, right? He's like working with like OpenAI and stuff, right? So I believe that the key is not about, whether you know that guy or he knows me, right? The goal is, hey, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who have a mission to build something, right? Then you can kind of like absorb the energy. You can kind of like learn from each other, right? I think that is the key. And I feel like all these like top accelerators, they actually can do that for us. Yeah.
I love it. Was Coinbase, you talked about Coinbase and Bitcoin, was that your first taste of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, or where you are in Asia, were they already holding meetups and discussions around cryptocurrency, and this was fairly new to you? Maybe the concept of an exchange was like, oh, that's a little wild this early on. But did you know about cryptocurrency before joining Y Combinator?
I wish I talked to Brian at the time, right? I wish, right? The thing is, I think, I literally had no idea about cryptocurrency, right? Until 2018, right? At the time, the ICO boom, right? People talk about ICO all the time. And right, meme coin and stuff, right, is always part of the culture of Web3. And then at the time, a lot of people came to us, hey, Ray, for 9gag, maybe you should launch a get coin, right? Do an ICO. And then I tried to use MetaMask. It's fucking unuser friendly, right? Until today, it's still quite unuser friendly, right? So at the time I thought, hey, this shit won't work, right? That's why we didn't touch it, right? And then at the time ICO, the bubble burst, right? And then I thought, okay, we make the right decision, right? The thing is, hey, I wish that I learned more about crypto at the time, right? But turns out I didn't, right? Until like about 2020, 2021, right? I started to understand more because at the time, China, US, they were having some trade war and stuff, right? That's why I thought, maybe it's not very safe, right? To keep all your money in fiat, right? That's why we started to learn more about, okay, maybe you should have a crypto wallet, right? At the time, stablecoin was already a thing. That's why I convert some of my personal asset into stablecoin. That's how I actually get into crypto, right? And then about 1 year or 2 years later, so I started to buy NFT and wasted so much money on overpriced JPEGs, right? So that's how I learned about crypto. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And now you're a prominent figure in the Web3. So maybe some of those investments paid off because you got to know founders, you got to build a little bit of community. But what jumped out during that last Web3 bull run, 2021, mid-2021, was proofs, right? Proofs of stake, proof of attendance. We saw now recently after the FTX crash, proof of reserves that the exchanges are putting out. But you have a concept called proof of fandom. What is proof of fandom in your eyes? And maybe what would be the Web2 equivalent of this concept? Would it be like a Facebook group, or maybe something like 9gag, where it's just a community that shares links together?
To put it simple, right? I think our focus at Memeland is more about creator economy. It's more about SocialFi, right? And when we talk about SocialFi, it's about adding a Web3 layer to the social media, right? And that layer to us, in our opinion, right, is actually the proof of fandom, right? Because on traditional social media, there are two spectrum, right? On one end, it's like something like Instagram, like TikTok. You use it for free. Creators can use it for free. Yeah, they don't get paid directly. Right. On the other spectrum is something like OnlyFans, Patreon. Right, the creators get paid, but because the content is behind paywall, that's why they don't reach as much audience as their peers. Right. So we believe that using Web3, using blockchain, you can actually combine both together. That means your content can be seen by everyone. Right. But only a small portion of your fans are actually your holders. Right. Your true supporters. Right. And that part would be something that we call proof of fandom. Because on blockchain, everything can be like very transparent, right? Who's the number one fans of Seargent, right? Who's the number one fans of Taylor Swift, right? You have a lot of subscribers, but
probably not the same people. I'm going to assume it's not the same people that like Taylor Swift. Probably do not like me, but
no. The thing is, on social media, right? It costs nothing to follow, right? That's why you have like millions of followers, right? But the thing is, when you actually talk to them, you kind of feel like, okay, maybe I'm talking to like different groups of people of different needs, right? Maybe some of them, they just follow me for my cool pictures, right? Some of them, they actually like my songs, right? How can we find the audience that actually like what we're doing, so that we don't have to rely on traditional advertising, right? We can just work on the content for the audience that really love our content, right? That's something that we call proof of fandom. Because when it's on chain, you can, if you own the most NFT of Taylor Swift, right? Then you know that, okay, I can tell the world that I'm the number one fans. I think this is the proof of fandom, that we are talking about.
In your community, we saw a lot when the NFT market was high. People would jump in any Telegram group that they bought an NFT, and they'd be the community, look how strong our community is, until the price went down. And then all of a sudden, like, community is selling like crazy. What have you found in your community? Because it seems like your community has done a great job of sticking around, supporting the project. How battle tested was that proof of fandom during something like a bear market in the NFT land?
Yeah, our community sucks. I hate our holders. Yeah, jokes aside, right? Community is actually like a relationship, right? You cannot say that a relationship is solid until you went through hell together, right? That's how a community is, right? For a lot of projects, right, when they were still riding on the hype, right, or especially before the NFT or the token was launched, right, there's not real relationship. It's almost like a guy who wants to get laid, right? You will try to do everything, right? It doesn't mean that, that's actually love, right? Maybe that's likeness, right? That's something that you want, right? But that's not love, right? But when you are actually having sickness, right, and then you have to take care of each other, right, and till death hold you apart, right? That's what love is. Right? I feel like community is kind of like that, right? So you actually see that in Bitcoin, you see that in Ethereum, you see that in Solana right now, right? So for NFT, it's kind of like combining all this kind of stuff into a more visual form, right? Because you hold the NFT, you can change your profile picture. You can kind of like tell people that you're part of the community, right? Because you can't flex your crypto wallet all the time, right? People will think that you are a douchebag, right? Meanwhile, for NFT, you can flex it on your profile. Right. So how we think about community is, hey, it's a group of people having the same mission, right? And in Web3, part of that mission will always be making money together, right? But the bigger question is, can we do something in addition to make money together, right? We are not running an alpha group, right? We are trying to build something where you are trying to disrupt an industry. That's how we think about it. We always talk about SocialFi. We always talk about creator economy, right? And to be honest, when you look at the crypto space right now, there are not that many founders that actually build a web social media company before. Right? For us, we are still running 9gag. We are still reaching 200 million audience, right? So I would say that we kind of understand social media. And because we also started to learn more about Web3, then we believe that, okay, we can apply what we learn in Web3, combining with our experience in Web2, and try to build something for the creators. And in the same time, we can also try to give, I would say, not return, but more like give value, right, back to our early supporters, right? That's how we think about Web3. Yeah.
Do you see a lot of transition from 9gag supporters, people in that community now venturing into Web3 because of you and what you're building at Memeland. They're like, hey, this is interesting. We support you at 9gag. We want to see what's going on in blockchain. And maybe you're helping first-time users of blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs through this process. Do you see the kind of that transition?
We don't want to take credit on that, right? But I believe that some of our holders, actually, their first NFT project, right, is Memeland, right? It's our MVP, is our captains, is our potatoes. We have 3 collections, right? And some of them, I think their first fungible token, right, is also meme coin, right? Yeah. So I believe that we help push it, right? But it doesn't mean that, okay, whoa, we are like the game changer, bridging Web2 and Web3. I mean, I don't believe in that bullshit, right? Because it's not about the bridge, right? It's more about whether actually you're building something meaningful, right, for that audience, right? We talk a lot about onboarding people into Web3. It's not onboarding, right? It's actually bringing the Web3 tech into the existing crowd, right? Existing people, right? So I believe that we kind of like push that agenda a little bit forward, right? But that's not our goal, right? That's our mean, right? Because, hey, we actually need people to buy our NFT. We need people to support us, right? Otherwise, why don't we just keep building in Web2, right? When building in Web3, you need to learn how to communicate in Web3. You need to learn why people believe in you in Web3, right? So somehow we leverage that a little bit, right? Especially in the beginning. Because in the beginning, hey, when we get into Web3, who am I? No one really knows who I am, right? But maybe some of them know what NiGet is. Then we build on that. But at the end of the day, it's not just about using the Web2 connection. It's more about, do you actually have something interesting for people in Web3 that is kind of different comparing to all the other tokens, all the other projects, right? And at the same time, you can use that Web3 tech, you can use that blockchain tech, right, to bring disruption to the social media. That's what we believe in, right? And we hope our holders also understand that.
And when you created Memeland, did you see something? You said you got wrecked on a couple NFT projects. Did you see something that you're like, hey, I know I can do it differently, and I know I can give it the value that maybe some of these other projects are not giving? Was that the impetus to start Memeland, or did you just say, hey, we have to enter the space somewhere? I want to make sure that we have a vested interest in the space as we continue reaching out to all these projects and learning. Kind of which path were you leaning towards when starting Memeland?
We always, Memeland, right? We don't have a roadmap, right? But we have a 3-step action plan, right? The 3-step action plan is NFT is for building community. Token is for decentralizing the value. Product is for reaching the masses, right? And we didn't have this 3-step plan the moment that we launched Memeland. I actually thought that NFT was a scam, right? Why would people pay millions and thousands of dollars, right, for a JPEG, right? Why can't I just right-click and save, right? And because I work at NiGet, right? I understand one thing, which is, hey, when you get older, your curiosity is kind of like your joints, right? It becomes like weaker, right? So somehow you need to, you don't question why this is popular, right? Until you actually spend some time into it, right? Actually, I tweeted before, hey, you need to spend 69 hours, right? Before you comment any project is shit, right? So I think a lot of people in Web3 or just in life, they have a lot of prejudice, right? Regarding new things. Hey, TikTok was shit, right? That's why they don't play TikTok. Hey, Instagram was shit, right? And the Facebook was shit. Pinterest was shit, right? I mean, that's why you can see that all this social network, all this new technology, right? The first early adopters are always a younger generation because they are still curious, right? They don't really think that I ate salt more than you ate rice, right? They don't think like that, right? So for me, because I work with NiGet, we have a lot of young communities, right? That's why I try to learn more, right, before I comment, right? That's why in 2021, right, I started to buy NFTs, right, and got into a lot of the communities, right? Because I was like, hey, how come it was so crazy, right? People spend so much money on it. And then in total, right, I become crazy. Right? I spent 3,000 ETH, 4,000 ETH, right, and then to buy NFT. Right? At the time, ETH was like $4,000, right? So that's how I learned. Right? I joke about it all the time, right? For GameFi, right, people talk about play to earn all the time, right? For me, it's more like I pay, PAY, right, to learn, LEARN, right? So that's how we kind of like learn about Web3. That's why when we do things, right, we try to absorb what are the good projects are doing, right? But at the same time, we try to avoid the web flag. We try to avoid, I would say, all the bad practice, right? And that's how we've come so far. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that because you openly say you have no utility. Memeland has no utility, no roadmap. no promises and no expectation of financial return, which seems like the complete opposite of every other NFT project that I've seen out there. We're still waiting for about, I think about what, 100,000 video games and comic books that were supposed to hit the market in 2021. We've yet to see that. Was that a risky move to say, hey, we promise you nothing? We are just going to go with value. We're going to build together as a community. Was that risky when everyone else was kind of maybe promising the world back at that time?
There are a few reasons behind that, right? Number one is I'm a more, I would say, I'm a more experienced founders, right? And I see through a lot of this like bullshit, right? as a founder, right? And I also do some angel investment, right? I also see a lot of this kind of bullshit, right? That's why I always feel like, hey, if you want to build a company, right, don't tell people your whole plan, right? Because we are not at university, right? We are not doing pitching competition, right? Most of the companies that you see these days who are influential, they actually didn't set out to build what they are doing right now, right? I mean, Instagram was not a photo sharing app, right? It was like a location app, right? I don't believe that WhatsApp imagined they could be this big, right? I think when you see most of these companies, right, they actually have a destination they want to go, right? But they don't have a map because they don't know where the road is, right? It's also one of the reasons why Memeland is building based on the private theme, right? Because I love the concept, right? Because it's not, okay, you actually know the road. You actually only know the destination, right? But there will be storms, there will be like typhoon and shit like that, right? But then you try to navigate, right, based on the situation, right? But your goal doesn't change, right? Maybe your goal change and stuff like that, but still, right? And you kind of like know the direction. Yeah,
yeah, you have a North Star, and your mission
right?
doesn't. I mean, your mission doesn't change very much.
Exactly, right?
And that's very interesting because I think Slack started as a gaming. Did Slack start as a game? I thought Slack started as a game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think most of the time, right, all disappointment, right, is all the heartaches, right, is because you have expectation, right?
Right.
And we try to under-promise, over-deliver. Right. And that's why what could be more under promised than saying that this is actually useless, right? Yeah. So that is the second reason, right? We want to manage the expectation. And then of course, right, the third reason is, hey, we want to make sure that kind of have a kind of echo back to our meme culture, right? To NineGag, right? And NineGag was all about meme. We launched a project in Web3 called Memeland, right? And then our token is called Meme Coin. Right? Of course, we have to embrace the meme culture. Right? And to be honest, most of the meme culture, they literally do nothing, right? And that's why we want to do it. And of course, the fourth reason would be the legal reason, right? I mean, most of the regulators, right, they actually don't like, they sue you, right? Because you promise a lot, right? You're selling securities, right? For us, hey, we have a direction, right? But we actually don't promise anything, especially on the token side. And I think that will kind of like give us more protection on that as well. So that's why I say that, no, there are a few reasons behind that. Yeah.
I love that. The compliance one, as a former investigator from like a blockchain investigator. And now you're seeing the regulators are going, you using a graph emoji, a rocket emoji, a money sign emoji. They're coming after you. So saying right there, you have no chance of making money right there on the website, I think does a lot of good. What was your decision-making process to build on Ethereum? Because we've seen Solana has a couple projects. They have the Pepe coin on Ethereum. They have Bonk, which seems to be doing rather successful recently. With so many blockchains, some offering a lot lower fees and more focus on certain types of cultures, whereas Ethereum covers like the whole wide spectrum of Web3. What was your decision-making process about launching on Ethereum?
It's pretty straightforward, right? My first wallet I used was an app called Argent, ARGENT. It's like it's a crypto wallet, right? That built on Ethereum, right? So that was my first contact, right, with Ethereum. And to be honest, the first token that I bought was actually not Bitcoin, right? It was Ethereum. At the time, I remember it was like $200, right? And then I thought, oh, then it pumped $400, and oh shit, I have to sell it, right? I mean, yeah, how silly was I, right? But anyway, yeah, the whole concept was we go to where the biggest audience is, right? That's the lesson that we learned from NineGag is, hey, I mean, you can do all the analysis, right? To think, oh, which platform is good, blah, 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 right? But the key is, hey, your audience is always only a subset of the bigger market, right? So how can you pick the biggest market where you can convert some of them into your audience, into your communities, right? And then that's why we picked Ethereum at the time. But to be honest, the more that we experience, right, the more we feel like, okay, maybe Bitcoin, right, has their own selling point, their own community, right? And then Solana, right, they also have that, right? But to be honest, there are only a few, I would say, choices that make sense, right? And right now we are also exploring that. And to be honest, when you see like all these meme coin on different chains, right, they also do quite well, right? Then you understand that, okay, meme is like the common denominator, right, of all the chains, right? All the blockchains, they need a meme coin, and we want our meme coin, right, to one meme to rule them all. Right? So that's why we're looking into all of this, right? I'm not like a chain maxi, right? To me, I want to create value, right? I'm like a value maxi, right? If there's value to build, right, then we should do it, right? There's one concept that we at NineGag we talk about a lot is and also Memeland, right? Talk about it a lot is a concept called WIN, is what's important now, right? So for us, hey, we try to reprioritize all the time. We try to think about, okay, maybe our assumption was not right? And maybe, the situation has changed, right? That's how we think about building products. That's how we think about community strategy. Yeah.
That's interesting. And you're building like a Disneyland. Like Memeland isn't just a few projects or a few collections. You also have something interesting, which is basically a TripAdvisor for Web3 and also an OnlyFans, but with clothes. And definitely when those things stuck out to me, you talked about OnlyFans earlier. What is the benefit of OnlyFans on the blockchain but has clothes? I think OnlyFans actually tried to pivot that way a couple of years ago, and they quickly aborted that mission. So maybe tell me about those two projects and what's intriguing about them.
What are you talking about? I don't know what OnlyFans is. Just kidding. Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is, because again, right, we've been working on social media for 15 years, right? We see the shift, right, of the relationship, right, between the platform, the creators, the fans, and also the advertisers, right, on social media. In the past, right, when there was still enough competition, right, creators actually have a better say, have a bigger voice, right? But once the platform, right, they continue to become bigger, right, then they control what the audience see, right? I mean, the Facebook, right, Facebook has feed, right, and then right now all the social app have feed, right? So somehow the creators, they actually don't really connect to their fans, right? I mean, you maybe have 50 million followers, right? But it doesn't mean that you can reach 50 million people all the time, right? I feel like OnlyFans is actually the healthiest social media, social platform out there, right? When I talk about healthiest, it's not about the content and stuff, right? It's more about the relationship between the platform, the creator, and also the fans, right? And most of the creators, they actually don't need to rely on advertising on OnlyFans, right? So, I mean, if we want to be safer, right, then we can talk about Patreon, right? So it's a very similar model in a way, right? So we believe that we can probably do something like this, right, in Web3, right? In OnlyFans, right, people pay, right, because they want to see exclusive content, right? They want to get connected to the creator. I mean, this is not exclusive, right, to adult content, right? Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, tech long enough to understand that most of the new breakthrough of technology is actually led by three industries, right? Number one is military, right? Like, for example, like GPS that we use today, right? It was actually built for military use, right? So military, right? Number two is actually games, right? All these like gaming mechanism, right? It will become like part of the product, right? Strategy, right? When you continue to build it, because I mean, all people love games, right? Especially the newer generation, right? And then the third industry is actually adult industry. It's like the porn industry, right? I mean, look at this video call, right? The first consumer-facing industry that adopt video call and video conferencing, right? It's actually porn, right? I mean, I don't remember the name, right? But I remember all these like video website, right? For adult content, right? So I believe that OnlyFans kind of like prove that, there's a need for deeper connection between the creators and the fans, right? And how do you segment that? Right? I feel like the easiest way is actually by payment, right? If you're willing to pay, that means that you care about that person more, right? You care about that creator more, right? I feel like for blockchain, we can actually kind of like scale up this kind of concept. Because even for OnlyFans or any other payment platform, right, you need to at least get a PayPal account, and then you need to pay in fiat. Right? And then all of this kind of stuff, right, is actually quite challenging for a lot
Right.
of different people in different countries. Right? I mean, you lived in the US or live in Hong Kong, right? I mean, it feels okay. PayPal, all this like payment is very, very easy, right? But maybe for most of the people, especially in Southeast Asia, in nations, right? I mean, they don't have PayPal, right? I mean, they don't even have a bank account, right? But
Right.
right now, because of blockchain, actually a lot of people starting to get on chain, right? They have a crypto wallet, right? And at the same time, right, somehow it is not bound by the geographical location. I think stuff like that creates the new foundation of creator economy. And at the same time, as I mentioned in the beginning of this call, right, we have proof of Fandom, right? Because we have blockchain, right? It can be verified, right? And I think all this kind of stuff is something that Web2 company cannot provide, right? And we believe that, oh, maybe this is an angle, right, where we can create a new kind of creator economy. We can create a new kind of social app for the new generation of creators and fans. Yeah.
But it makes sense, right? Like you're running a company that has over 200 million users across multiple platforms. If I want to talk to you and get insights about you on how to build a community, payment is probably the easiest way. You can't talk to 100, 200 million people, much less 200 people on a regular basis. And from some of what these OnlyFans girls are showing, only a portion of their income is being made by pictures. 90% of their income is made by messages. I'm assuming it's probably some 6-year-old person in the Philippines messaging on their behalf. But nonetheless, that's where they're making the majority of their money, which is exactly to your point. It's not just the nudity, it's these connections, it's just these kind of like superficial relationships. They're actually driving a lot of the compensation here.
Yeah, this is it's economics 101, right? You can't really monetize, right? Resources that is kind of like unlimited in a way, right? You can only monetize the scarce resources more easily. Right? I feel these days content is not really that scarce, right? When you think about the broader sense, right? But connection still is, right? But to show the creators that you like that you are the biggest fan, right? That is like still rare, right? That is still the scarce resources, right? So we believe that there's a angle in that, right? And to be honest, when we zoom out and we look at the Web3, the crypto space right now, I mean, Web3 and crypto is very, very good at one thing, which is decentralized, the very first centralized, like industry. Right? I think banking is one thing, right? I mean, when you look at the different industry, social media is definitely very centralized, right? And it's almost mind-blowing to me that everyone has a social app on their home screen of their phone, right? But when you look at the top 100 tokens in Web3, there's no really top tokens about social media, about SocialFi, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense to explore into that angle, right? The real question is not about whether SocialFi is a thing, right? The real question is which company, which project, which token, right, can actually win the SocialFi game, right? I feel like we have an edge because we have been building social media for 15 years and we have a pretty good start in Web3, right? So we'll see how it goes, right? But somehow we are confident in what we are building.
And we've seen early stages of this big cloud, the decentralized social media that they kind of created. But I think the angle they took was more on celebrity status versus building community. And that's probably why they fizzled out as much. One of your favorite tweets, and probably one of the Twitter's or X's favorite tweets, was around it's damn hard to build in Web3, which basically highlights the dichotomy of users ask for utility, you give them utility, then they want art, right? You give them art, then they ask for utility. They say, hey, we want to build a community, but then 2 seconds later, they're like, when moon? So tell me about building in Web3 and why you felt it necessary to post a tweet that received millions of views and probably millions of agreements across the Web3 ecosystem, especially amongst builders that are really just trying to please the community that's driving these projects.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the best thing about Web3 is money, right? The worst thing is also about money, right? As I mentioned, right? We are building communities, right? And community is a relationship. Imagine a relationship, right, that actually gets money involved, right? It will become complicated, right? I mean, between like husband and wife, between like employees and employees, right? Most of the time, right, one of the sources of argument is actually money, right? And right now, you ask people to put thousands of dollars, right, into trusting you, right, and to build something in the future, right? That is already kind of like shaky in a way, right? Not to mention, there were so many like rug pulls, right? I mean, a lot of people who are still in Web3 today, they all faced like at least like a few walkthroughs before, right? They all have PTSD because we launched like Memeland about 2 years ago, right? It's like a few weeks after Luna crash, right? And then that year, FTX will also crash, right? So it's almost, oh, people lose faith, right? People think that, okay, crypto didn't work, right? I mean that's the hard part, right? And that's why when we started to build, we already see so much shit, right? When we get into the space, right? Because at the time I thought, oh, we were an iGet, right? We have 200 million audience, right? When we got into Web3, people should be celebrating us, right? Because we actually bringing mass attention to Web3. But turns out, no, Web3 people hated us. Web2 people hated us because they feel like, oh, for Web3, oh, you are just another cash grab, right? And then for Web2, oh, fuck, don't touch this kind of scam, right? So it's almost like we are in the middle that no one really like us, right? So that's why I had that tweet, right? It's not because I want to complain. I want to lay out the facts, right? Because all these like people getting into Web3, they believe that they can make shit ton of money. But the thing is, I mean, one thing that they can make a lot is maybe a lot of anger, maybe a lot of people angry, right? And you get a lot of like curses to your family, right? But not actually money, right? So I want to lay that out, right? Yeah, and I feel like why it got a lot of attention is because I think a lot of builders who actually want to build, I think they share that kind of sentiment as well. Right, but maybe they don't have a they don't have a platform like me to talk about it. Right, that's why I rail out, and then people feel that okay, they resonate with it. Yeah, the thing is, I don't feel like this is a bad or good thing. Right? It's almost like you have to understand that hey, the crypto world is so conflicting, right? And I didn't talk about any solution right, in my tweet, right? Because I believe that the solution is not something that you talk about. Right? It's almost, hey, we believe in decentralization in Web3. Right? The good thing about decentralization is you actually don't need the world to love you. You only need 100 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people to love you. I mean, when you look back, right, Bitcoin was like a crazy experiment in the past, right? Right now, it's like getting ETF and stuff, right? And what it shows is not just about, oh, how revolutionary blockchain is. It shows that if you actually have a diehard support of a group of people that were crazy enough to change the world, maybe they can, right? So I believe that that's the direction, that's the goal, and to me, for us, we lay out the direction of Memeland, right? We dox ourselves from day one, right? We tell the world that what we've been doing, and we almost always keep our promise, right? Maybe sometimes we delay, right? But most of the time we keep our promise, and most of our whole early supporters, they actually kind of like get the return and stuff like that, right? By the way, this is not like financial advice and stuff, but it's more about, hey, it's not about we want to make that money. Right? It's because we want to grow our company as well. Right. It's just that because of the whole, I would say, value design, right? That's how things works in Web3. Right. I talk about this to our team all the time. There are like two important AIs in this world. Number one is artificial intelligence, right? Number two is not number two, right? But the other important thing is aligned interests, right? I feel like Web3 do align the interests really, really well. We just have to understand how to do, right? A lot of like my Web2 founders friends, right? Right now, because the market is heating up, and then they talk to me, hey, Ray, we want to launch a Web3 project. Right?
That NFT stuff you were talking about a couple of years ago. How do we get in on that?
Exactly, right? And I tell them, hey, don't think about making money in Web3, right? Think about giving value, right? Once you can give enough value, then you may figure out something new, right? Where you can actually create something bigger, right? That can get a lot of value together, right? Together is the key, right? In the past, you make all the money, right? Right now, you actually have to make money with people together, right? It's almost like you don't cook for yourself, right? You cook for a bigger audience, right? You need to eat together, right? That's how Web3 is. I think, I mean, to be honest, I don't have a solution, right? To be honest, we get further all the time, right? If you go to our Discord today, right, they still ask, hey, when, right? I mean, although we launched the most successful token, one of the most successful token, right, in 2023, right, they still ask us, hey, when do you launch the next thing, right? I always talk about that. In 2022, right, my son was born in late May, right, and then we launched our first NFT in early June, right? So it's almost like having twins at the time. Like having two kids at the time. One kid grow up, another kid didn't. Another kid doesn't, right? and that kid doesn't grow up is our community, right? When you think about that, you actually accept the fact, accept the truth, right? Then you know how to navigate. To be honest, the number one job of a founder is solving problems, right? This is a problem that we know, right? Then just solve it, right? So I mean, I don't mean the tweet, right, to be like discouraging for the founders.
No.
I just want it to be like a very factual, right, a tweet, right?
Yeah.
So that everyone knows, oh, it's not like all glamorous, right? Building Web3. Yeah.
I think that resonated with everyone because everyone's been on both sides of it, right? They've all been on the sides of, yes, I love this project, more utility. But then when they need to cash out because they got wrecked in another project, they're like, come on, I need a little bit of value. It's some extra value on the table here so I can dump it on OpenSea. Talk to me a little bit about, we talk about the creator economy a lot and tokenomics for creators. It seemed like the NFT phase, the tokenomics was create more NFTs. NFT prices were going down. Well, we'll give you more NFTs. It seemed a lot like the traditional printing money. How can we look at it differently now? Because we saw how that didn't work because now everyone's holding a bunch of NFTs that are worthless. And it doesn't matter how much more you create, the value is just not there in a lot of these projects. But for someone that's created that value, what do you think the tokenomics looks like for creators going forward in 2024?
Yeah. Sure. I think NFT, the dynamics of NFTs and also fungible token is actually very, very different, right? For NFT, right, you just have to think about who gives the effort, right?
Yeah.
And then who makes the money, right? And whether there's like enough money back to the creators, right? I mean, one of the promises of NFT was, right? I mean, the focus was, right? Royalty, right? You almost, I mean, a lot of the creators went into the space, right? Because they feel, okay, this is something new. Right? And then if I create something awesome, right, and then people buy it, and then when they resell, I can get the royalty, right? I mean, this was a promise, and that kind of works, right? But right now, royalty is basically zero, right? I don't want to name any other platform, right? Because I don't think this is the fault of a platform, right?
Yeah.
This is more like just human beings, right? You just want to reduce the cost, right? You just want to make more money, right? So it's almost like that meme from the TV show, Everybody Loves Raymond, right? That's why we can't have nice things, right? That's exactly that meme, right? And the thing is, okay, right now the landscape has changed, right? Then as a creator, what do you do, right? I think for NFT, it's almost always kind of like consumer facing. In a way that, okay, I just create a digital product and then I sell to the audience, right? And it's almost like Nike selling sneakers, right? I mean, you buy the limited edition of Jordan like 11, right? Then you sell it. Nike actually didn't make more money, right? That's why Nike has to make more shoes to make more money, right?
Right.
That's kind of like how NFT is, right? Or in general, right? Meanwhile, for token, right, it's actually the dynamics very, very different. Right, because when you have tokens, right, a lot of the tokens, they actually have airdrop, right? They actually have a lockup for the team, right? So somehow the team can't pull that easily, right? Because it's almost like everything is kind of like locked, right? If you invest in a good project. And the whole, I would say, incentive designs makes more sense in fungible tokens, right? So it's almost, okay, our token price goes up when there are like more supporters, when there's more demand, right? Then we have to work harder to achieve that. Right. So by doing that, the incentive alignments are actually better. Right. So that's how I think that the difference between NFT and also a fungible token. But at the same time, I believe that NFT is the best gateway for people to enter into Web3. Right. Because I mean, it's almost, I mean, when you talk to your friends, right? How many of them actually buy a Forex, right? Buy USD, buy JPY? How many of them buy that? No. Right? But a lot of them buy random bullshit, right? They buy sneakers, they buy Rolex, right? They buy MS handbag, right? Because people are very visual, right? Especially for men, right? So they want to buy things that they can see. I think NFT is kind of
and
like
then they can show other people, and that other people can see that they have, right?
Exactly. That's 69% of the function of social media, right? It's the vanity, it's for the show off, right? It's for flex, right? And I think NFT actually can do a lot of that, right? I believe that NFT is probably the most important usage of crypto these days, right? Not every token can disrupt the finance industry, but every token can have their own NFT ecosystem, right? So that's why you see a lot of these L2, L1, right? They all have the NFT, right? Because that's the only thing that actually people buy, right? Yeah, it's not like, oh, we farm your token, right? But they actually buy stuff, right? So I mean, This is how we see NFT and also the FT is like fungible token, right? But back to your question, how can we create value for creators, right? I mean, in Web3, this is one big difference between us and also a lot of other so-called SocialFi projects, right? I mean, a lot of those projects, they come from Web3. That's why they build for the Web3 audience, right? They use the same marketing tactics, right, for across most of the projects, which is, okay, we promise you the airdrop. Please do the work, and then you do the airdrop, right? For us, it's almost part of that. But also we believe that, hey, if we actually want to get serious in a creator to join Web3, you can't sell them a promise because they are making money already, right? You need to give them money so that they can come to your platform. Because for creators, their need is very, very simple. Either you give me more fans or you give me more money, right? So in Web3 or the social platform, you can't give more fans to all these creators, right? That's why you need to promise them money, right? But instead of promise them an airdrop, it will be better if we have a circulating token where they can convert it into USDC or USDT or ETH, right? Or they can just keep holding on to it. That's why we launch NFT, the community, right? And then we launch a token, a circulating token, so that we actually have value, a trading value for the creators. Then we can use this like magic internet money, right, to attract all the creators to join us, right? But not just a promise, but more like, okay, you actually can get paid, right? And I think that's the real usage of Web3 in creator economy, right? I mean, we are launching new products, right, that you mentioned, like GM and stuff, right? We'll see how it goes, right? But we believe that the direction is correct, right? Of course, for the implementation, no product can be perfect in the first version, right? I mean, I remember Reid Hoffman, right, the founder of LinkedIn, he mentioned that, hey, if you are not embarrassed with the first edition of your product, you're launching too late, right? I believe that a lot, right? So we hope that the first version of our product suck so that we know that we actually keep pushing ourselves forward, right? But I think the general direction is actually very, very clear. Is how can we help creators to get paid and also get more fans, right? I think that is the key. And at the same time, when we get more creators into our ecosystem, there will be a higher demand for our token, right? Then maybe the price will go up. Then maybe our early supporters will get paid, right? But at the end of the day, it's not about money, right? We are in NFT for arts, right? We want to support creators, right? I mean, whether it's joke or not, right? But that's how we think about the whole, I would say, value design, right, in our ecosystem. Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. I run a content creating agency as well as hosting this podcast. And really, we just want more money to create more things. Like we use this money to create, obviously to pay the bills. But if you look at the majority of the creators, once they have their bills paid, they're usually using like the Mr. Beasts of the world. They're using that money to put back into their creations because they love to create, right? You can give them $1 million and they're probably going to spend that money creating more, not just, hey, let me go buy a Lambo and flash it on Instagram. Yeah. For the most part, right?
You still buy a Lambo, right? But you don't work just because you want to buy a Lambo, right? I mean, the Lambo is something that you also like. Oh, maybe you appreciate the showman, the craftsmanship and stuff like that, right? But at the end of the day, for the real creators, right? I'm talking about real creators, right? They really love creating content. They really love educating and influencing people, right? It's actually their passion to create content, right? The traditional social media model kind of like restraining them from doing so, right? Because they need to, whether the advertiser like that, right? Whether the platform likes that, right? I mean, Web3 is actually getting back to the basics. Okay, you just create content for your fans, right? For your audience. You don't have to think about, whether I talk about cars and then whether Toyota, whether like a Lambo, right? What I talk about, right? I think that's almost like back to the origin of what internet is, right? You just find your audience and then you create for the audience. And then if the audience think that you are worthy, right, then you should get paid, right? I think Web3 kind of do that on steroid, right? Because you are not getting paid in USD, right? You in HKD, right? You actually get paid with a token. So somehow you can double dip in a way, right? If the ecosystem that you're building is actually getting better and bigger and growing healthily, right? Then the token that you own, maybe the value also increase, right? That's how Bitcoin is, right? That's how Ethereum is, right? I don't see why we can't apply this, right, to social media, right? Because actually, as I mentioned, right, Web3 is really, really great at disrupting big platforms, right? Banking, we see DeFi to banking, right? I also see SocialFi to a lot of like social media companies, and maybe also GameFi, right, for a lot of gaming companies, yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. As a creator, I want to focus on creating, but if I'm spending 90% of my time working on administrative tasks, trying to find brand deals, creating proposals for the brand deals, and then basically creating something so far away from my brand, possibly to please them, that's why you see a lot of burnout, because we're doing more things that we don't even want to do just to just to pay to be a creator, just to get paid to be a creator. So I think
Yep.
what you're saying is absolutely correct. Can you
Yep.
just create? And if it's good, you're getting paid to create, which entail makes you create even more, right? Because you're seeing that positive reinforcement. More importantly, you're seeing the compensation. One
Yep.
thing I want to discuss is Asia. You're based out of Hong Kong. You said you were Dutch, so I feel like it's okay for me to say that you're based out of Hong Kong. We've seen a huge boost in Web3 in Asia, whether it's, as you said, play to earn games, the NFT and NFT culture. Tell me about what you're seeing on the ground there. What's really driving this force of nature coming out of Asia when it comes to Web3?
I think the biggest driving force is poverty. Right? I mean, it's part true, right? Also part jokes, right? But you are more leaning towards to adopt new technology, right? When you are not the richest country on earth, right?
Right.
I mean, US, of course, US has a lot of debt, right? But at least on the surface, right? US is the most powerful country, right? And you kind of like lead the existing financial system, right? You don't feel the need to change, right? But meanwhile, for a lot of these other countries, right, they don't have a very good like financial infrastructure, right? That's why blockchain, right, makes a lot of sense for them, right? I mean, if you are in the US, right, using PayPal, using Venmo, right, then you feel like, oh, it sucks to use MetaMask, right? But if you are living in like Vietnam or Thailand or the Philippines, right, you don't even fucking have like internet, right? Or maybe you don't even have clean water and stuff in some countries in Africa, right? And blockchain doesn't really is not really that bad, right? I mean, and because they don't have prejudice, they don't have the bias of what a banking transfer should be like, what a wire transfer should be like, right? They don't even know what wire transfer is, right? But right now with crypto, right, it breaks the boundary of the countries, right? I mean, I can send money very, very easily, right? From like Hong Kong to like Vietnam, right, to whatever country. Right? Maybe you are in the Africa, right? You are in the North Antarctica, right? I can still send money to you with blockchain, right? So I feel like that's one of the reasons, because the infrastructure, the so-called financial infrastructure was not there, right? That's why people don't have a lot of like prejudice and also burden on it, right? I think that's number one. Number two is, I don't know whether it's right or wrong to say, I feel like generally Asians are more degens, right? They are more, their risk appetite is higher, right? That's why you go into a casino, right? You see a lot of like Asian faces, right? Yeah. And I feel like that is kind of like echoes to what crypto is, right? You see a lot of big crypto companies and top exchanges, right? I mean, the management teams, right? They're like Asian faces, right? So I believe that also helps. And the thing is, right now they know that, okay, I make money, right? But in addition to buying all these like fancy houses and cars, right, you actually can build something bigger, right? That's why they reinvest. Right? That's why they build out more products. Right? That's why they invest in other tokens. Right? They invest in other NFTs. They invest in other products. Right? So that creates I would say, a global like Silicon Valley economy, right, in Asia. Right? For example, when we were talking to the top exchanges about launching a meme coin, right, our token, right, I would say other than Coinbase, right, all the exchanges that we talk to, all the listing team, they're Asians. Right? No matter where their biggest audience is, but
Right.
all the listing people, they're Asians, right? So I feel like, okay, shit, Asia is huge, right? And to be honest, I mean, of course, US, Europe, right? They still have their edge, right? But somehow when you talk about crypto, I think you can see that the government, right, the regulators, they are also more friendly to a lot of like the crypto projects, right? In Hong Kong, our chief executive literally come out to say we support Web3, right? They are granting official exchange licenses, right? They're talking about stable coins, right? Issued by the government, right? I mean, right now in the US, right, you can see that the regulation is still very strict, right? I mean, it's almost like something that you should not talk about, right? So, and of course, this helps, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you go to where the environment is the most friendly, right, to your business, right? That's why I'm very bullish about Hong Kong, not just because I'm a guy from Hong Kong, but because, hey, when you look at the structure, right, there are only a few number of like financial hubs in the world, right? New York, London, right? And then maybe Berlin, right? And then Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, right? what are the places that are actually pushing crypto, pushing Web3, right? I mean, for Dubai, right, there are a lot of like money from there, right? And then, but in Hong Kong, one advantage that Hong Kong has is actually the backing of China, right? I mean, I can't say it for the government, right? Because I don't know anything about the government and the politics, right? But I believe that if Hong Kong can push Web3, 100% is getting blessing, right, from the mainland government, right? And I mean, there's so much money, right, from to support this kind of new industry, right? And Hong Kong has already got the infrastructure for it because Hong Kong is one of the top financial hub. And then right now, if we are pushing that, you can just imagine this can be huge, right? People talk about ETH, ETF these days, right, in Hong Kong. It's not about like big BTC ETF, right? So you can see that maybe Hong Kong has a chance to shine. Maybe Asia has a chance to shine, right? When we talk about Web3. Yeah. And one more thing that I want to add was like in your previous questions, right? You talk about creators and stuff, right? It's almost like in Bible, right? There's a verse that you can't serve two masters, right?
Right.
As a creator, you are serving a few masters, right? When you're creating in traditional social media, you're serving the platform. Oh, you want to create something that fits the algorithm, right? You're creating content, right, for your advertiser. You want something that your advertiser will like. And then you're also trying to create content for your fans, right? You're actually serving like including yourself, right? You are serving like four masters, right? Of course, it doesn't really work well, right? But right now in Web3, it's almost like we're back to the basic, right? We create content that we like. We find fans that actually like our content, right? So this is like pretty back to the basic, right? So I think this is something that why I'm very excited about creator economy Web3. Yeah.
And I like your explanation of China because China has such a weird dynamic, right? They ban crypto. They have probably the most miners around the world. One day they're raiding crypto businesses. The next day, as you say, they're kind of allowing Hong Kong to kind of flourish in this crypto ecosystem. So I think you at least give us something to think about.
It's actually not China. Weird when you think about the political situation, right? It's almost like economic sense because Hong Kong is under something the China calls like one country, two system. Hong Kong is a very capitalistic country. China right now is still in their own way is a communist country, right? And the thing is, right, you can see a lot of things that cannot be done in China. They are actually allowed in Hong Kong. Right. I mean, people talk about, whether this is safe and stuff like that, right? I mean, for the last 100 years, this is safe, right? I feel it makes a lot of sense on the financial. It makes a lot of financial sense, right? For China as a country to support crypto, right? Because that's where the next wave of money is, right? That's where the future of finance is, right? I would say that it's close to impossible, right, for China to disrupt US, right, in fiat world, right? If we have to think about this kind of like power dynamics, right? But it makes a lot of sense that, if Hong Kong, if China, right, support the developments of Web3, there's a good chance that maybe a stable coin on the stable coin wise, right? China actually can be like the leader, right, in Web3, right, on this kind of like settlement and currency and stuff like that, right? You don't need to print US dollars, right, to launch a US stable coin. Right? Because China is actually biggest like a creditor, right, to the US, right, on this money. I just put my US debenture and I can launch a stable coin. Right? I mean, people talk about these things like that in Hong Kong, right? I don't know anything about this, right? But it just makes a lot of sense. It's almost, hey, you can't compete with the existing leader in their old game, right? But when there's a new game, maybe you should put into it. It's the same for us. We probably can't win over TikTok or Facebook in Web2, right? But in Web3, I mean, they have their own constraints, right? They can't do something like that, right? Because Web3 is about decentralization. They can't decentralize their profit, their revenue, right, to their view holders, right? But we can, right? So I feel like it can be a very interesting 10 years, right, for crypto, right, for finance, for the countries, yeah.
That's interesting. So as you said, your friends are coming to you. Crypto winter's kind of thawing out as we end this podcast. Well, at least we see price-wise it's thawing out. What are some new features, partnerships, anything exciting for you in 2024 for Memeland and even 9gag or beyond? There was some kind of merger of communities. What do you got going on your side?
I mean, for NFT, right? I mean, we have 3 collections, right? The cheapest one is called the potatoes, right? It's close to 2 ETH, right? That means it's close to $5,000 US, right? That's very expensive, whatever scale, right? Yeah. But for crypto, for fungible token, right? Right now, meme coin is like 0.024 or something like that, right? You can buy a token, right? When you only have $10 or $100, right? You can't buy our NFT when you only have $100, right? I don't think fractionalized NFT works that well, right? Because people want, it lacks that kind of like flex element, right? So we believe that we actually have a lot of things to do this year because we finally, we kind of like graduated into like the token world, right? We actually get more attention in the token world, right? So this year, our focus will be, okay, we need to launch products, right, that actually do something that we set out to do, right? We want to launch some product that solve some problems that we see, right, in the last few years, right? And of course, with our Web2 experience, I think that we have an edge of that, right? I'm a big fan of Charlie Munger's, like the circle of competence, right? And social media is our competence, yeah. And I think that in Web3, we have a pretty good start, right? So I'm very excited about what we are launching this year, right? And we just closed our so-called meme coin farming like a few days ago, right? And then we will do the airdrop, and then we will try to launch new products, right, to support the airdrop and stuff like that, right? So it can be it will be very exciting, yeah, and also very busy, yeah. And that's why I just want to write on this podcast is, hey, if you're interested in creator economy, right, join us, right, as a holder, as a teammate, right, whatever capacity, right, just pay attention to what we are doing. Yeah, it
I
will
love
be
it.
exciting.
What
Right?
kind of
Yeah.
positions are most of your positions? Technical positions, so like the development or computer engineering? Is
I
that
think
where most?
basically, I feel like there are a few positions that we
Yeah.
are hiring. Right? I mean, number one is the business development side, right? Because we just launched the token, right? I mean, we have a lot of that work that we need to do because I mean, most of the existing business we have connection, right? But we still have to
Right.
talk to them, right? That's why we need more people, right? And of course, for product and also engineering people, right? Because we want to build the products out, right? And then these are the few positions that we need the most, yeah.
You quoted the late Charlie Munger. Is there any piece of advice you'd give builders, whether you've built in Web 2 and Web 3? If someone like myself is like, hey, I want to start a business today. I want to be an entrepreneur. What would be like a 2-sentence piece of advice you would give them?
I don't have any advice, right? Because the only advice that I want to share is most advice is only a combination, right, of life's experience, right, over exaggerated. Yeah, this is a quote not from me, right, but actually from the creators of Gmail, Paul Buchheit, right? He shared that when we were at YC, right? Because when you ask people, what would be the best advice to build a company? They always say that, hire tier A people, top tier people. The thing is, when you are new founders, right, you actually can't hire shit, right? I mean, you would be grateful if you can convince your friends, right, to join your company already, right? So I feel like most of the advice, it may not apply to us at all, right? But the thing is, you should still kind of like read all of them, listen to all of them, but you have to kind of like analyze, right, and then to see which one is applicable. Right? That's why what I want to tell all the builders, right, who listen to your podcast is, I mean, just keep building, right? And the more you build, right, the more that you listen to your friends, to your community, right, the better that you understand the direction, right? Then maybe you are exploring, building something new, right? Then no one really talks about, right? I mean, people are generally by default negative in Web3. Right? So you can kind of like have to see through that kind of shit, that kind of negativity, right, in order to survive in Web3. Yeah.
I've been seeing too many wagmies in the last 18 months, right? I saw a lot in 2021. I've yet to see one, I think, in the last 18 months.
Yeah, you
A
will
lot
see
of
that
people
again.
don't think we're all going to make it anymore.
Yeah, you will see that again, right? Because I mean, for example, the recent like narratives that I see about Solana, right, is literally like something that they talk about, right? All these side projects talk about 2 years ago, right? So you feel like the same old playbook, they will talk about it again. Right? It doesn't mean that it's the same bullshit, right? Because the fundamental has changed, right? So I feel like, I think WebMe, right? I think people will still talk about it, right? Because there are still new people coming in. They will still be the liquidity, right? That's how they learn, right? But somehow I believe that I started to see more like solid company actually understanding more about Web3. And also 2 years ago, you didn't have me, you didn't have Memeland, right? So somehow I feel like there will be more and more real builders joining the space. And also the existing builders, they also learn more, right? So I feel like we are getting into a better place, right? And that's why I'm bullish, right? I'm bullish on the tech, right? I'm not very bullish about people, right? About the community. But in general, I believe that we are moving forward, right? As an industry, as a company, as a community.
Ray, I haven't laughed this much during a podcast. I'm still giggling from some of the things that you said
I'm
in
told that your podcast is very serious, right? But to be honest, I enjoy this chat a lot. Yeah.
I think it was really great. Where can people find you? I know you only use X or Twitter when you're on the washroom, but to be quite honest, that's like most of us anyway.
Yeah.
But where can people find you? What's the best place to? What's the best social handle?
Twitter would be the best, right? It's like a NiGet CEO, right? It's not because I'm a douchebag to tell people that I'm the CEO, right? Because at the time I thought, hey, I want to become like POTUS in a way, so that when I quit the company, right, then I can just pass on my X account. But turns out people just call me a NiGet instead of Ray. Yeah, so maybe I fail on that part. Yeah.
That's awesome. One last question, actually. 200 million users. What kind of, if you don't want to talk numbers, you don't have to, but I'm assuming people are like 200 million users, like the ad revenue must be crazy. But you also said something in this conversation very interesting, is that a lot of people that use memes don't do anything. So they might not be buying products, even if you targeted them. So what does that mean? Is that more revenue? Is it maybe low-hanging fruit where, do advertisers like it? They don't really care how active they are. They just want to get more awareness. Can you talk a little bit about that over the next couple minutes?
Yeah. I mean, there are two things I want to talk about, right? Number one is 200 million audience, right? I mean, we have fans on like Instagram. I think we have close to 60 million followers on our main account on Instagram, right? But they're fans, right? They're audience, right? They're not users, right? They actually may not use our website. They may not use our app, right? So that may be a little bit different, right? And as I mentioned before, right, most of the traditional social media platform, they give you a lot of fans. They give you a big followers numbers, right? That doesn't mean that they give you money, right? That's number one. Right? Number two is our business model in Web2 is advertising, right? One thing that about advertising is the budget is actually controlling at the regional level, is at the country level, right? But for NiGet, we actually have fans across the world, right? We are big in aggregate. We're not really that big in a specific country. Or maybe we're like top 100 website, top 200 website in a country, right? But in great aggregate, we're top 500 website in the world, right? But when you are like advertisers, right? When you spend your ad dollar, you actually only put ad money to the top 10 website in your own countries, in your own places, right? So that's why we don't make that much money, right? In advertising Web2, right? But we actually have a huge influence, right? That's why we feel like, okay, this system sucks for us, right? That's why we want to build in Web3, right? If I were like Mark Zuckerberg, right? I probably don't bother too much about Web3, right? Of course, Mark Zuckerberg, they did matter, right? They have their vision, right? But to us, right, it's almost like we need to change because we feel like, okay, we underutilize our community. We underutilize the value that we have been created, right? And I mean, we're lucky that we have gone this far, right? And we have a pretty good start in Web3, right? And somehow we want to adopt what we've learned in Web3 and try to bring, I wouldn't say on board the masses, right? But more, bring this awesome Web3 blockchain tech, right, to the bigger audience, right? And that's our goal. That's what we set out to do. Yeah.
I love it. People, if you want these jokes, you have to follow Ray on Twitter. Such great insight. It's funny, but a lot of the things that you're saying are absolutely truthful. I think that's what makes it so actually entertaining, is how truthful it is. Ray, you've been an amazing guest. I love what you're building. Hopefully you can come back on when some of these projects launch and we can see how they did, how the audience responded, what the community is like when things get hot again. Ray, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you. It's my honor.